The war had lasted 11 years, and Earth had lost almost everything. It began quietly, the way most disasters begin. A survey ship found strange wreckage near the edge of the Oort cloud, metal that was not human-made and not friendly. Within a year, the first colony on Mars, Beta, had gone silent. Within 3 years, the outer settlements were gone. Within 7 years, the enemy fleet had reached the inner solar system, and humanity fought for every rock and every station it had ever built. The enemy called themselves the Vaskar Dominion. Nobody on Earth knew much about them, not really. They did not speak before they attacked. They did not offer terms. They simply came, in ships shaped like black spearheads, and they burned whatever they found. Some scientists believed the Vaskar were not even a single species, but a collection of conquered worlds forced to fight under one banner. It did not matter. The guns were the same. The death was the same. Now, in the 11th year of the war, only one ship remained. Her name was the ISV Hyperion, and she was Earth's last true warship. She was old, patched together from 3 different hulls after the Battle of Ceres, her hull plaiting a mismatched quilt of gray and rust-brown metal. Half her weapons had been cannibalized from ships that no longer existed. Her engines groaned when she pushed past half power. But she still flew, and she still fought, and as long as she did, Earth had not truly lost. Captain Maria Reyes stood on the bridge of the Hyperion, watching the main screen with tired eyes. She was 43 years old, though the war had aged her more than the years alone ever could. Her dark hair was cut short and practical, streaked with gray at the temples. Her uniform was patched at the shoulder, where a piece of shrapnel had torn through 2 years ago, at the Battle of Europa. She still had the scar. She kept the patch as a reminder. "Report," she said, her voice steady even though her stomach was tight with dread. Lieutenant Commander David Okoro, her second officer, looked up from his console. He was younger than her, only 30, but the war had put lines on his face that should not have been there yet. "Long-range sensors are picking up movement, Captain. Vaskar signatures, a lot of them." "How many is a lot?" 41 ships, Captain. Maybe more." "The sensors are still refining the count." The bridge went quiet. 41 Vaskar warships was not a fight. It was an execution. Maria felt the old fear rise in her chest, the fear she had learned to push down and use, instead of letting it control her. She had lost so many people to this war. Her husband, a doctor on the Mars colony, had died in the first year, when the Vaskar burned the settlement from orbit. Her daughter, Sophia, was somewhere on Earth, if Earth still stood, if the last shelters had not fallen. Maria had not spoken to her in 4 months. Communication with Earth was spotty now, cut off more often than not, jammed by enemy signals, or simply too dangerous to risk. "Position?" Maria asked. "They're closing from 3 directions, Captain. It looks like they want to box us in." Okoro pulled up the tactical display, and Maria watched red icons multiply across the screen, surrounding the single green dot that represented the Hyperion. "There's no clean escape vector. If we run for open space, we run right into more of them." "What about the graveyard?" Maria asked. Okoro's jaw tightened. Everyone on the ship knew what the graveyard was. 2 years ago, the Sol Defense Fleet, 43 ships, the pride of what remained of Earth's Navy, had made its last stand at a place called Kepler Ridge, a debris-scattered region between the orbits of Jupiter and Saturn. They had tried to stop the main Vaskar advance. They had failed. Every single ship had been destroyed. The wreckage still drifted there, an enormous graveyard of broken hulls and dead engines, silent and cold, a monument to humanity's worst day. Maria's own brother, Diego, had died at Kepler Ridge, commanding the destroyer Andromeda. She had never gone back to that place, not once in 2 years. She had avoided it the way a person avoids a grave they cannot bear to visit. "The graveyard is close, Captain," Okoro said quietly. 12 minutes at current speed. It's the only region nearby with enough debris to break their sensor lock and give us cover." Maria closed her eyes for 1 second, just one. Then she opened them, and the fear was gone, tucked away where it could not slow her down. "Set a course for the graveyard," she said. "Full burn." "Aye, Captain." The helmsman, a young man named Ethan Cole who had joined the crew only 8 months ago, straight out of the last training academy on Earth, worked his console with quick, nervous fingers. The ship shuddered as the engines came alive, pushing the Hyperion forward at maximum thrust. Gravity plating strained to compensate for the acceleration, and Maria felt the deck tilt slightly beneath her boots. "Captain," said Lieutenant Amara Singh from the sensor station, "Vaskar ships are adjusting course. They're matching our vector. They know where we're headed." "Of course they do," Maria muttered. "They've probably known about the graveyard longer than we have. It's where they killed the last fleet." The bridge crew exchanged glances but said nothing. There were 312 people aboard the Hyperion. It was not a large crew for a ship her size, because so many stations had been left unmanned after years of losses that could never be replaced. Every person on this bridge had lost someone. Every person understood, without needing to be told, what it meant to fly toward the place where the Sol defense fleet had died. "Captain," Okoro said, "if I may ask, why the graveyard? If they know it too, we're not hiding from anything. We're just picking the place we die." Maria did not answer right away. She stared at the tactical display, at the wall of red icons closing in from 3 sides, more of them than she could easily count. She thought about her daughter. She thought about the shelters on Earth, the last cities, the last few million people who still had hope, only because somewhere out in the dark, one ship still flew the flag. "We're not choosing where we die, Commander," she said finally. "We're choosing where we make them work the hardest to kill us. The debris field will slow their formations. It'll break their sensor locks. It gives us more places to hide, more angles to fight from. It's not victory. But it's the best chance we have." She did not say the rest of what she was thinking, that some part of her wanted to see Kepler Ridge with her own eyes before the end, wanted to fly past the wreck of her brother's ship and know that she had tried everything, right up until the last moment. "Understood, Captain," Okoro said, and turned back to his station. The next several minutes passed in tense silence, broken only by the quiet murmur of officers relaying data, adjusting shields, checking weapon status. Maria walked the length of the bridge, stopping at each station, speaking a few quiet words to each officer. It was a habit she had picked up over the years, a small ritual before every battle. She did not know if it helped them. It helped her. At the weapons station, Petty Officer James Kowalski looked up as she approached. He was one of the oldest members of the crew, a veteran who had served on 3 different ships before all of them were destroyed, and he ended up on the Hyperion. His hands, thick and scarred, moved across his console with practiced ease. "Weapon status, Kowalski?" "Forward railguns are at 90%, Captain. Point defense grid is fully operational. Missile bays are down to 60 rounds. We haven't had a resupply in 4 months." He paused, then added, "It won't be enough against 41 ships, Captain. I want to be honest with you." "I know," Maria said. "Do what you can, with what we have." "Always do, Captain." She moved on to the engineering station, where Chief Engineer Dr. Elena Vasquez was monitoring the strain on the Hyperion's aging reactor. Elena was one of the few civilian scientists still aboard a military vessel, a specialist in propulsion systems who had refused to leave the ship, even when offered a transfer to the last research station on Titan. "How's she holding up?" Maria asked. "The engines are holding, but barely," Elena said, not looking away from her readouts. "We're running 20% over the safe thermal limit on the main reactor. If we push much harder, or much longer, we risk a containment failure." "Understood. Keep me informed if that risk changes." "Captain," Elena said, finally looking up, "can I ask you something?" "Go ahead. Do you think we have a chance? A real chance, not just a chance to slow them down?" Maria considered lying, offering some comforting words meant to steady the crew's nerves, but Elena Vasquez was not the type of person who wanted comfortable lies. She was a scientist. She wanted the truth, even when the truth was hard. "I don't know," Maria said honestly. "But I know we're not stopping, not while there's still a way to fight." Elena nodded slowly and turned back to her console. Maria returned to the center of the bridge as the Hyperion crossed into the outer edge of the debris field. On the main screen, the darkness of space began to fill with shapes. Massive pieces of broken hull, twisted metal frames that had once been warships, entire sections of destroyed vessels drifting silently in the void, illuminated faintly by the distant light of the sun. It was like flying into a cemetery built from steel and memory. "We're entering the graveyard, Captain," Ethan Cole said, his voice tight. Maria looked at the screen and felt something twist inside her chest. There, drifting among the wreckage, She could see the broken hull of a destroyer, its name still faintly visible along the side, despite years of exposure to the void. Andromeda. She made herself look away. Position of the enemy fleet? She asked. They're entering the debris field behind us, Captain, Amara Singh reported. Splitting into 3 groups to search the wreckage. They're going to try to flush us out and box us in from multiple directions. How much time do we have before they find us? 15 minutes, maybe 20, if we keep moving and use the wreckage for cover. Maria nodded, though she felt the weight of every second pressing down on her. 15 minutes, 20 at the most. And then 41 ships would close in, around the Hyperion, and there would be nowhere left to run. Take us deeper into the field, she ordered. Weave between the larger wrecks. Cole, I want you flying like your life depends on it, because it does. Yes, Captain. The Hyperion moved forward, slower now, navigating carefully through the maze of broken ships. Maria walked to the front of the bridge and stood before the main screen, watching the wreckage of the Sol Defense Fleet drift past like ghosts. She thought about her brother. She thought about the crews of all 43 ships that had died here, fighting to buy Earth a little more time. She did not know it yet, but she was about to learn that the Sol Defense Fleet had left behind more than wreckage. Captain, Okoro said suddenly, his voice sharp with confusion. I'm getting strange readings from some of the wrecks. Faint power signatures. Very faint, almost nothing, but they're there. Maria turned toward him, defined strange. I don't know how else to say it, Captain. Some of these ships that have been dead for 2 years, are showing trace energy readings, like something inside them is still waiting. A cold feeling crept up Maria's spine, though she could not yet say whether it was dread or something else entirely. Around her, the bridge crew exchanged uncertain glances, the tension in the room shifting into something new, something none of them had a name for yet. Show me, Maria said quietly, stepping closer to the screen. Behind the Hyperion, deep within the Vaskar formation, the alien commander watched the small human ship vanish into the debris field and gave the order to pursue. 41 warships turned their engines toward the graveyard, ready to finish what had been started 2 years earlier. They had no way of knowing what still slept among the wreckage of the Sol Defense Fleet, no way of knowing that the graveyard they were about to enter was not as dead as it appeared. Maria stared at the faint, flickering readings on her screen, at the ghost of a signal coming from ships that should have had no power left at all. She did not understand it yet, but some instinct, buried deep beneath the fear and the exhaustion of 11 years of war, told her that something important was about to happen. Keep us moving, she said, and someone find out what in God's name is still alive out here. The Hyperion pressed deeper into the graveyard, surrounded on all sides by the wrecks of the dead, as behind her, the Vaskar fleet closed in, and ahead of her, something old and patient began, very slowly, to stir. The Hyperion drifted between 2 enormous broken hulls, her engines running at the lowest possible power to avoid detection. On the bridge, Maria Reyes stared at the strange energy readings that Okoro had found, trying to make sense of something that made no logical sense at all. Talk to me, Commander, she said. What are we looking at? Okoro's hands moved across his console, pulling data from every sensor the ship had. It's faint, Captain. So faint I almost missed it. But there are power signatures coming from at least 6 of the wrecked ships nearby. Not weapons, not engines, something smaller, something like a heartbeat. A heartbeat, Maria repeated. I know how it sounds, Captain, but that's the best way I can describe it. A slow, steady pulse of energy, like something small, is still running inside those hulls. Auxiliary systems, maybe. Backup power cores that never fully died. Amara Singh looked up from the sensor station, her brow furrowed. Captain, I've cross-referenced the ship registries. All 6 of the wrecks with power signatures were part of the Sol Defense Fleet. Specifically, she paused, checking her data again. Specifically, they were part of a group called the 3rd Auxiliary Squadron. Maria frowned. She had served in the war long enough to know most of the fleet's history, but the name meant nothing to her. I've never heard of the 3rd Auxiliary Squadron. That's because it was classified, Captain, said a new voice. Everyone on the bridge turned. Dr. Elena Vasquez had stepped away from her engineering station and was walking toward the command center, her tablet in hand, her expression unusually intense. Explain, Maria said. 2 years ago, before the Battle of Kepler Ridge, I was working with a research team on a program called Project Lazarus, Elena said. It was a last resort contingency plan, developed after Earth realized it was losing the war, and might lose every major fleet it had. The idea was simple, on paper. If our warships were destroyed, could we make sure they didn't stay destroyed? Could we build something into them that would let them come back? The bridge went silent. Maria felt her pulse quicken. Go on, she said. We didn't have the resources to build entire new fleets of resurrection-capable ships. There wasn't time, and there weren't enough materials, so the program was limited. A small team retrofitted a portion of the Sol defense fleet, maybe a dozen ships out of the 43, with experimental dormant systems, self-repairing nanite frameworks, backup AI cores, and long-life power cells designed to survive years of dormancy. The idea was that if those ships were destroyed in battle, the systems inside them would stay dormant, conserving power, slowly repairing critical damage over time, using the nanite framework and whatever raw material was available in the wreckage itself. Given enough time, and the right activation signal, those ships could wake up again. Why wasn't I told about this? Maria asked, her voice sharp. Because the program was buried under so much classification that even most senior commanders never heard of it, Captain. I was one of only a handful of people who worked on it directly, and most of my team is dead now. When the Sol defense fleet was destroyed at Kepler Ridge, Project Lazarus was considered a failure. Command assumed it hadn't worked. There was no way to check, not without risking another fleet in this graveyard, and after the disaster, there was no fleet left to send. Maria stared at her, a strange mixture of anger and disbelief rising in her chest. You're telling me that some of these wrecks might still be capable of coming back online? I'm telling you it's possible, Captain. I don't know for certain. The program was experimental, unproven in real combat conditions. It's entirely possible the systems failed, or were too badly damaged to ever recover. But the power signatures Commander Okoro found matched the exact profile of a dormant Project Lazarus core. Slow, steady, conserving energy, waiting. Maria turned to look at the main screen, where the wreckage of the Sol defense fleet drifted silently around the Hyperion like sleeping giants. Somewhere out there, 12 ships that were supposed to be nothing more than scrap metal might still be holding on to a fragile, flickering spark of life. How do we activate them? She asked. Elena hesitated. There's supposed to be an activation protocol, Captain. A specific signal, broadcast on a frequency that only the dormant systems would recognize. I know the theory. I don't know if I remember the exact sequence. It's been 2 years, and I never expected to need it. Then you'd better start remembering, Maria said. Because in case you haven't noticed, we have 41 enemy warships closing in on our position, and we have exactly one working vessel to face them with. Behind the Hyperion, deep within the maze of wreckage, the Vaskar fleet continued its slow, methodical search. Their sensors struggled against the interference of thousands of scattered metal fragments, but they were patient, and they had numbers on their side. It was only a matter of time before they found the human ship hiding among the dead. On the bridge, Elena Vasquez sat down at an auxiliary console and began working, her fingers flying across the interface as she tried to reconstruct the activation sequence from memory. Maria watched her for a moment, then turned back to the tactical display. Commander Okoro, how long until the Vaskar find us? Hard to say, Captain. Given the interference in this field, 10 minutes, maybe less if we're unlucky. Maria nodded. 10 minutes. She thought of her daughter again, of the shelters on Earth, of the millions of people who were counting on this ship, even though most of them would never know it existed. She thought of her brother, Diego, who had died somewhere in this very graveyard, commanding a ship that might still hold a spark of the life that had once filled it. Elena, Maria said quietly, did my brother's ship, the Andromeda, have the Lazarus systems installed? Elena looked up from her console, her expression softening. I don't know, Captain. I wasn't given the full list of which ships received the retrofit. It was kept compartmentalized, even from the engineers who installed it, so that no single leak could expose the entire program. Maria said nothing. She simply nodded and turned back to the screen, searching the drifting wreckage for a glimpse of her brother's ship, wondering if some small part of him, some small part of the crew who had died with him, might still be waiting in the dark. Captain, Amara Singh said suddenly, I'm picking up something. The Vaskar fleet has detected debris movement near the eastern edge of the field. They think it might be us. They're converging on that position. Are we near the eastern edge? Maria asked. No, Captain. We're well to the west. It's a false lead, but they'll figure that out fast. Then we use the time we have, Maria said. Elena, how close are you to reconstructing that activation sequence? I have a partial sequence, Captain, but there's a risk. If I broadcast an incomplete or incorrect signal, it could do nothing at all, or worse, it could trigger a self-destruct failsafe that was also built into some of these systems, in case the technology was ever captured by the enemy. Maria closed her eyes for a moment, weighing the risk. 41 Vaskar warships were closing in, and the Hyperion's odds of surviving that fight alone were close to zero. If there was even a chance that a dozen dormant warships could be brought back to life, it was a chance worth taking, no matter the danger. Do it, Maria said. Broadcast what you have. Captain, I want to be clear, this could fail completely. I understand the risk, Doctor. Broadcast it. Elena nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she finalized the sequence on her console. Transmitting now, Captain. Low power, tight beam, aimed at the 6 wrecks with active power signatures. If this works, we'll know within a few minutes. The bridge fell into tense silence as the signal went out, a faint pulse of encoded data traveling through the darkness toward the sleeping wrecks of the 3rd Auxiliary Squadron. Maria stood at the front of the bridge, watching the main screen, watching the drifting hulls of ships that had died 2 years ago, waiting to see if anything would happen. Nothing did, not immediately. Captain, Okoro said, after almost a minute of silence. Vaskar fleet is adjusting course again. They've ruled out the eastern position. They're expanding their search pattern. I estimate they'll reach our sector within 6 minutes. Maria felt the weight of failure settling into her chest. 6 minutes was not enough time. If the Lazarus systems did not respond soon, the Hyperion would be found, and there would be no help coming from the graveyard of dead ships around them. Elena, Maria said. Anything? Nothing yet, Captain. The signal reached the target hulls. Whether their systems are receiving it, I can't say. If the power cores are too degraded, or if the receivers were damaged in the original battle, there's nothing I can do to force a response. Maria walked slowly toward the main screen, staring out at the wreckage of the ship closest to their position, a shattered cruiser with a hull number she recognized, the ISV Meridian. She remembered the crew, remembered the captain, a stern older man named Thomas Reyna, who had trained under her years before the war began. Come on, she whispered, not sure who or what she was speaking to. Wake up. For a long moment, nothing happened. The bridge crew waited in silence, watching the sensor readouts, watching the drifting wrecks that gave no sign of life. Maria felt the cold certainty of failure creeping into her chest, the awareness that this had been a desperate gamble that had not paid off, that the Hyperion would soon face 41 enemy ships completely alone. Then Amara Singh's voice cut through the silence, tight with disbelief. Captain, she said, I'm reading a power spike. Multiple power spikes. It's the Meridian. Her reactor is coming back online. Maria's heart pounded as she stared at the screen, watching the dark, broken shape of the Meridian begin to glow, faint lights flickering to life, along her damaged hull, for the first time in 2 years. Slowly, silently, in the darkness of the graveyard where the Sol defense fleet had died, something ancient and patient was waking up. She's not the only one, Captain, Okoro said, his voice filled with disbelief and something close to hope. I'm reading power signatures spiking across 5 more wrecks. They're all coming online, all at once. Maria stood frozen for a moment, watching the impossible unfold before her eyes, the dead fleet of Kepler Ridge stirring back to life around her tiny surviving ship. She thought of her brother, of Thomas Reyna, of all the crews who had died here 2 years ago, and wondered, with a strange and desperate hope, whether some part of them had waited in the dark for exactly this moment. Signal the ships, Maria said, her voice steady, despite the pounding of her heart. Tell them Earth needs them again. Behind the Hyperion, deep in the graveyard, the Vaskar fleet continued its search, unaware that the wreckage they had once considered nothing more than a monument to human defeat was beginning, piece by piece, to open its eyes. Light returned to the graveyard. It began slowly, a faint glow spreading across the cracked hull of the ISV Meridian, running along old circuits that had not carried power in 2 years. Then, more lights appeared, one by one, across 5 other wrecks scattered through the debris field. On the bridge of the Hyperion, Maria Reyes watched the screen with a tight throat and a pounding heart, hardly able to believe what she was seeing. "Report," she said, though her voice was quieter than usual. "6 confirmed reactivations, Captain," Okoro said. "Meridian, Andor, Valkyrie, Coldstream, Endeavor, and—" He paused, and Maria saw his hands still for a moment over his console. "And the Andromeda, Captain." Maria felt something catch in her chest. Her brother's ship, Diego's ship. She had told herself for 2 years that there was nothing left of him out here, nothing but broken metal and memory. Now some part of that broken metal was glowing with power again, and she did not know whether to feel hope or grief, because both feelings arrived at once, tangled together in a way she could not separate. "Status of each ship?" she asked, forcing her voice to stay steady. Elena Vasquez answered this time, reading from her console. "All 6 ships show active reactor cores and rising power levels, Captain, but they are far from combat ready. The nanite repair systems have been working slowly for 2 years, using scavenged material from the surrounding wreckage to patch critical damage. Structural integrity is estimated between 40 and 60% across the group. Weapon systems are largely untested. We won't know what they can actually do until we ask them to do it. Can they fly? Engines are online, Captain, though I'd guess at reduced capacity. And there's something else." Elena looked up from her screen, her expression a mixture of amazement and uncertainty. "Each ship's AI core appears to have remained active in a low-power state throughout the 2 years of dormancy. That means the original command programs, and possibly fragments of the crew's final log data, may still be intact." Maria's mind raced, trying to process what that meant. The AI systems on Earth's warships were not simple autopilots. They were sophisticated tactical companions, designed to learn from their crews, to store command patterns and decision histories that helped a ship fight more effectively over time. If those systems had survived, the 6 ships waking up around the Hyperion were not simply empty hulls with working engines. They were, in some strange and technical sense, still themselves. "Open a channel to the Meridian," Maria said. "Let's see if anyone is listening." Amara Singh worked quickly at her console. A moment later, a burst of static filled the bridge speakers, followed by a voice, distorted and rough, but unmistakably alive. This is the ISV Meridian," the voice said, slow and uncertain, as though speaking through a fog. "Identify yourself." Maria stepped forward, her hands gripping the edge of the command console. "Meridian, this is Captain Maria Reyes, of the ISV Hyperion. Do you have a commanding officer aboard?" There was a long pause before the voice answered again. "This is Tactical AI Unit 7, designation Meridian Prime. My crew did not survive the battle at this location. I have been in low-power standby for—" Another pause, longer this time, as if the AI was struggling to process the passage of time. 731 days, Captain." Maria closed her eyes for a moment. An AI, alone in the dark for 2 years, slowly repairing its own broken hull, waiting for a signal that might never come. She could not imagine what that must have been like, if an AI could even experience something like loneliness. But something in its voice, halting and uncertain, sounded almost human in its confusion. "Meridian Prime," Maria said gently. "Earth needs you again. We are under attack. A Vaskar fleet of 41 ships is searching this debris field for us right now. Are you able to fight?" Another pause. Then, when the voice returned, it sounded different, steadier, as if some old, buried protocol had finally found its purpose again. "Weapon systems show 63% functionality, Captain. Shields are at 40%, still recovering. I am ready to engage on your order." Maria felt a fierce, unexpected surge of hope rise in her chest. "Stand by, Meridian. We're bringing the rest of your squadron online." One by one, the other 5 ships responded to hailing signals, each of them slow and uncertain at first, each of them carrying a similar story of 2 years spent drifting in silence, repairing themselves piece by piece, using nothing but scavenged debris and patient, dormant machinery. The Andor, the Valkyrie, the Coldstream, the Endeavor. And then, finally, the Andromeda. Maria stood very still as the channel opened, static crackling through the bridge speakers. She had not expected her voice to shake, but it did, just slightly, when she spoke. "Andromeda, this is Captain Maria Reyes of the ISV Hyperion. Please respond." The silence stretched long enough that Maria began to fear the ship's systems had failed to reactivate properly. Then a voice came through, quieter than the others, almost hesitant. "Captain Reyes." The AI paused. "This unit retains partial command logs from Captain Diego Reyes. Relational match confirmed. Are you his sister?" Maria's throat tightened. "Yes," she said softly. "I am." Captain Diego Reyes gave his final order 11 seconds before hull breach, the AI said. He instructed all surviving systems to preserve themselves for as long as possible, in case Earth ever needed this ship again. A brief pause. "I have been waiting, Captain Reyes." Maria closed her eyes, allowing herself exactly one breath to feel the full weight of that statement. One breath to grieve, and to hope at the same time, before pushing the feeling down, where it would not interfere with what needed to happen next. "Then let's finish what he started," she said. "Andromeda, are your weapons operational?" 58% functionality, Captain. I am ready." Around the Hyperion, 6 broken warships drifted in the dark, their lights growing steadier, their engines humming back to life after 2 years of silence. It was not a fleet in any traditional sense. The ships were damaged, their crews long dead, their systems running on patched-together power and half-repaired weapons. But they were awake, and they were willing to fight, and in the middle of a graveyard built from Earth's worst defeat, that felt like something close to a miracle. "Captain," Okoro said, breaking the moment. "Vaskar fleet has adjusted its search pattern again. They're closing in on our sector. Contact in approximately 4 minutes." Maria turned to the tactical display, studying the positions of the 6 reactivated ships and the approaching Vaskar formation. 7 ships against 41 was still a desperate fight, especially with 6 of those 7 vessels running at reduced capacity after 2 years of dormancy. But it was no longer a hopeless one. "Elena, is there any way to reactivate more of the Lazarus ships? You said a dozen were retrofitted." Elena shook her head. "Only 6 responded to the activation signal, Captain. The other 6 either had their power cores destroyed too badly to repair, or they were too far from our transmission range. I can try boosting the signal, but it will take time we don't have. Then we work with what we've got," Maria said. She turned to Okoro. "Pull up the tactical layout of this section of the debris field. I want to know every large wreck, every piece of cover, every angle we can use." As the crew worked, Maria studied the 6 reactivated ships on her display, each one a scarred veteran of a battle that should have been their last. She thought about what Elena had said, about the AI cores retaining command patterns and decision histories from their original crews. In a strange way, the spirit of the Sol Defense Fleet had never truly died. It had simply been waiting, patient and quiet, for someone to give it a reason to fight again. "Meridian Prime," Maria said, opening a channel to the reactivated squadron. "Can you coordinate with the other 5 ships? I want a formation that uses the wreckage for cover, something that lets us strike from multiple angles without exposing our position too early." "Acknowledged, Captain," Meridian Prime replied. "Cross-referencing tactical data with squadron units. Andromeda, Valkyrie, and Coldstream will take flanking positions using the larger wrecks to the north and south. Andor and Endeavor will hold center formation with Hyperion. Estimated readiness time, 90 seconds. Maria allowed herself a small, tired smile. Whatever these ships had become during their 2 years of silence, they had not forgotten how to fight as a squadron. The old training, the old coordination, all of it was still there, buried in code and memory, waiting to be used again. "Captain," Amara Singh said, her voice tight. "Vaskar lead elements entering visual range. 3 minutes to contact." Maria walked to the center of the bridge, feeling the old, familiar calm settle over her. The calm that came before every battle, when fear gave way to focus. She looked out at the 6 ships taking up position around the Hyperion, their damaged hulls catching the faint starlight, their weapons slowly powering up after 2 years of silence. "All ships," she said, opening a channel to the entire reactivated squadron. "This is Captain Maria Reyes. I know none of you expected to fight again. I know some of you have been alone in the dark for a long time, waiting for a signal that might never come. That signal is here now. Earth is still standing, but barely. And today, we're going to give her a little more time. Hold formation, wait for my order, and let's show them the Sol defense fleet isn't finished yet. A chorus of acknowledgements came back through the channel, 6 ships confirming readiness, in voices that ranged from steady to uncertain, but united all the same. Maria turned back to the main screen, watching the first Vaskar warships emerge from behind a massive tangle of broken hull plating, their black spearhead shapes cutting through the debris field, like predators entering a trap they did not yet know existed. "Contact in 30 seconds, Captain," Okoro said. Maria gripped the edge of her console, her eyes fixed on the approaching enemy fleet. Behind her, 7 ships, 1 battered survivor, and 6 reawakened ghosts, waited in the shadow of the graveyard where humanity had once suffered its greatest defeat. "Steady," she said quietly. "Let them come to us." The Vaskar fleet advanced deeper into the debris field, unaware that the wreckage around them was no longer silent, no longer harmless, no longer dead. Somewhere in the darkness, 41 enemy warships were about to learn that Earth's last stand at Kepler Ridge had never truly ended. It had simply been waiting. The first Vaskar cruiser drifted into the kill zone without any idea of what waited for it. Maria Reyes watched the black spearhead shape glide past a broken hull section, its sensors sweeping the debris field, searching for the single human ship it believed was hiding somewhere nearby. It had no way of knowing that 6 more ships, once thought dead, now sat powered up and ready, hidden behind the wreckage on every side. "All ships, hold position," Maria said quietly over the squadron channel. "Wait for my mark." On the tactical display, she watched 3 more Vaskar ships enter the debris field behind the first, spreading out in a standard search formation. They moved with the confidence of a fleet that believed itself unstoppable, a fleet that had already destroyed the Sol defense fleet once, and expected to finish off its last survivor without much trouble. "Captain," Okoro said, 4 enemy ships now within engagement range. More are entering the field behind them." Maria studied the positions carefully. If she struck too early, she would alert the rest of the Vaskar fleet before her makeshift squadron was ready. If she waited too long, more enemy ships would arrive, and the numbers would become impossible to overcome, even with the element of surprise. She needed to strike at exactly the right moment, when enough of the enemy had entered the field to make the ambush count, but before the full weight of their 41 ships could converge on her position. "Meridian Prime," she said. "Status of weapon charge? 81%, and rising, Captain. Recommend engagement within the next 2 minutes for optimal power levels." "Understood." Maria turned to Okoro. "Time until the main Vaskar formation reaches this sector?" "Approximately 90 seconds, Captain. It would have to be enough." Maria took a slow breath, feeling the calm of battle settle fully over her now, pushing aside every fear and every doubt until only the mission remained. "All ships," she said, "on my mark. Focus fire on the lead cruiser. Concentrate everything we have. We take out one target completely, before they even know we're here, and then we use the confusion to hit as many as we can before they organize a response." Acknowledgements came back from each ship in turn, steady now, the uncertainty of their first moments awake, replaced by the old discipline of trained warships preparing for combat. 3, 2, 1, mark. The graveyard erupted with light. 7 ships opened fire at once, railgun rounds and missile trails cutting through the darkness of the debris field, converging on the lead Vaskar cruiser from 6 different angles at once. The enemy ship had no time to raise shields or maneuver. It simply came apart, its hull breaking into burning fragments that scattered among the wreckage of the ships it had once helped destroy. For a moment, there was silence on the Vaskar channels, a stunned pause, as the rest of the enemy formation registered what had just happened. Then chaos broke out. The remaining 3 ships in the immediate area scattered, breaking formation, firing wildly into the debris field in an attempt to locate the source of the attack. "Second target, bearing 037, Maria called out. "Andromeda, Coldstream, take it." "Acknowledged, Captain," came Andromeda's quiet, steady voice, and a moment later, twin streams of railgun fire lanced out from behind a shattered hull section, tearing into the side of a second Vaskar cruiser. The ship's shields flared and failed under the concentrated assault, and moments later, a well-placed missile finished the job, sending the wreck spinning off into the debris field in a shower of fire. "Two down," Okoro reported, his voice tight with a mixture of disbelief and grim satisfaction. "Vaskar main formation is reacting, Captain. They know something's wrong. Estimated 40 seconds until the bulk of their fleet arrives in this sector." Maria's mind raced through the tactical possibilities. 2 enemy ships destroyed in the opening moments of the ambush was more than she had dared hope for, but 40 seconds was not much time before the true scale of the Vaskar fleet arrived, and her small, damaged squadron would be facing odds that even the element of surprise could not fully overcome. "All ships, reposition," she ordered. "Use the wreckage. Don't stay in one place. Hit and move. Hit and move. We cannot afford a straight fight against their full numbers." The Hyperion's engines roared as Ethan Cole guided the ship through a narrow gap between 2 massive hull fragments, putting solid cover between them and the approaching Vaskar formation. Around her, the 6 reactivated ships did the same, weaving through the debris field with a skill that spoke of old training, reasserting itself after 2 years of silence. The main Vaskar formation arrived like a wave crashing against a shore, dozens of black spearhead shapes pouring into the sector, weapons already firing at anything that moved. Maria gripped her console as the Hyperion shook under the impact of a near miss, the shockwave rattling loose debris across the outer hull. "Shields at 82%, Kowalski called from the weapons station. "We took a hit on the port side, minor damage only." "Return fire," Maria ordered. "Target anything that gets within range." The battle that followed was unlike anything Maria had experienced in 11 years of war. The debris field became both weapon and shield, a chaotic maze where the smaller, more maneuverable human ships could weave between wreckage that the larger Vaskar cruisers struggled to navigate. Every human ship, even the 6 damaged veterans of Kepler Ridge, understood something the enemy did not. This graveyard belonged to them. "Valkyrie is taking heavy fire," Amara Singh reported. "Shields down to 20%. Andromeda, Coldstream, cover her," Maria ordered. "Hyperion, redirect to support." The Hyperion banked hard, engines straining, as Ethan Cole pushed the ship through a narrow corridor of wreckage, emerging just in time to catch a Vaskar cruiser in a crossfire alongside the Andromeda. Railgun rounds tore into the enemy ship's flank, and Kowalski's targeting system found a critical weak point in its shield generator, sending the vessel listing sideways, trailing smoke and debris. "Valkyrie's clear," Okoro reported. "She's falling back to repair her shields." The fight continued in bursts of chaos and brief silence, the human squadron using the maze of wreckage to strike quickly and vanish before the Vaskar ships could organize an effective response. But the enemy's numbers were beginning to tell. For every ship the human squadron destroyed or disabled, 3 or 4 more Vaskar cruisers pressed forward, tightening the noose around the small group of defenders. "Captain," Elena Vasquez called from engineering, her voice strained. "The Coldstream is reporting critical damage. Her reactor containment is failing." Maria's stomach dropped. "Get her out of the fight, now." "She says she can't disengage, Captain. She's pinned by 3 Vaskar cruisers." Maria opened the squadron channel immediately. "Coldstream, this is Reyes. Disengage and fall back. That's an order." There was a pause, filled with the crackle of static and the distant sound of weapons fire, before a calm, steady voice responded. "Negative, Captain. Reactor breach imminent, regardless of my actions. Recommend I use remaining power to maximize damage to enemy formation before failure." Maria's throat tightened. "Coldstream, belay that. Find a way out." "Apologies, Captain. There is no way out. It has been an honor to fight again." The channel went quiet for a brief moment, before the AI's voice returned one final time. "Tell the crew of the Sol Defense Fleet that Coldstream held her line." The Coldstream's reactor detonated in a blinding flash, the resulting explosion tearing through the 2 Vaskar cruisers that had pinned her in place, destroying both instantly and sending a shockwave rippling through the surrounding debris field. On the bridge of the Hyperion, the crew watched in stunned silence as the wreckage of a ship that had only been alive again for a few brief minutes gave everything it had to protect the squadron it had just rejoined. "Coldstream is gone, Captain," Okoro said quietly, "but she took 2 of them with her." Maria felt the loss settle heavily in her chest, even for a ship she had known for less than an hour, even for an AI she had spoken to only briefly. It had chosen, in its final moments, to fight for a fleet and a crew it had barely had time to rejoin, and that sacrifice would not be forgotten. "Regroup," Maria said, forcing her voice steady, despite the ache in her chest. "We finish this. For Coldstream, and for everyone who died at Kepler Ridge 2 years ago." The remaining 6 ships tightened their formation, fighting with a fierce, Wrecker-at energy now, using every trick the debris field offered to strike at the Vaskar fleet and vanish before retaliation could find them. Slowly, ship by ship, the Vaskar numbers began to thin, their formation growing disorganized, as confusion and mounting losses eroded their earlier confidence. "Captain," Amara Singh reported, "Vaskar command ship detected. Large cruiser, heavily shielded, positioned at the rear of their formation. I believe it's directing the rest of the fleet." Maria studied the new contact on her display, a massive vessel far larger than the standard Vaskar cruisers, its hull bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. If that ship was truly coordinating the enemy's response, destroying it or disabling it could throw the remaining Vaskar forces into disarray. "Meridian Prime, Andromeda, Andor," Maria said. "On me. We're taking out that command ship." "Acknowledged, Captain," came 3 steady replies, and the 4 remaining ships of the reawakened squadron, along with the Hyperion, turned toward the heart of the Vaskar formation, ready to strike at the source of the enemy's strength, knowing that whatever happened next would decide the fate of everyone still fighting in the graveyard of Kepler Ridge. The Vaskar command ship loomed larger on the main screen with every second, a massive black vessel bristling with weapons, sitting at the heart of a formation that was slowly beginning to unravel. Maria Reyes watched the tactical display as the Hyperion, Meridian, Andromeda, and Andor closed in. 4 ships that together carried barely a fraction of the firepower the command ship alone could bring to bear. "Captain," Okoro said, "we're picking up heavy shield readings from the command vessel. Estimated defenses are nearly triple that of a standard cruiser." "Then we don't hit it like a standard cruiser," Maria said. "Elena, is there anything in the Lazarus data about coordinated strike protocols? Anything that could help us punch through shields like that?" Elena's fingers moved quickly across her console. "There's an old tactic in the archived combat logs, Captain. Focused fire, timed to strike the same point on the shield simultaneously, faster than the shield generators can redistribute energy to compensate. It was designed for exactly this kind of situation, overwhelming a heavily shielded target with smaller ships. Can the AI cores coordinate that kind of precision?" "They should be able to, Captain, if given a fixed target point and a synchronized countdown." Maria opened the squadron channel. "All ships, target the command vessel's forward shield emitter, right at the base of the bridge tower. We fire together. Exact same moment, no exceptions. Elena is sending targeting data now." A chorus of acknowledgements came back, and Maria watched as the 4 ships adjusted their approach vectors, angling toward the massive command vessel from different directions, weapons charging in perfect synchronization, guided by shared tactical data. The Vaskar command ship, sensing the danger, began to turn, its point defense systems opening fire on the approaching human ships, filling the space between them with a storm of energy blasts and interceptor rounds. The Andor took a direct hit along her port side, her shields flaring bright before failing entirely, but she held her course, refusing to break formation. "Andor, report," Maria called. "Shields down. Hull integrity holding at 60%, came the calm reply. "Continuing approach, Captain. 10 seconds to firing solution," Meridian Prime reported. Maria gripped her console tightly, watching the countdown tick down on her display, watching the 4 ships close the final distance toward the Vaskar command vessel through a hail of enemy fire. The Hyperion shuddered under a glancing blow, alarms blaring briefly before Kowalski silenced them, his hands steady on the weapons controls. 5 seconds. The command ship's point defense fire intensified, clearly recognizing the threat now, but it was too late to change course, too late to redirect its heavier weapons in time. 3, 2, 1, fire. 4 streams of concentrated weapons fire converged on the exact same point along the command ship's forward shield, striking with a precision that overwhelmed its defenses before the shield generators could compensate. The barrier flared brilliant white and then shattered, exposing the ship's unprotected hull to the full weight of the squadron's combined firepower. "Shield is down, Captain," Okoro shouted. "Command ship is exposed." "All ships, finish it," Maria ordered. Railgun rounds and missiles tore into the unprotected hull of the Vaskar command vessel, ripping through armor plating and support structures, sending explosions rippling along its length. The great ship shuddered, its engines flickering and dying, its weapons falling silent one by one, as critical systems failed under the relentless assault. Across the battlefield, the effect was immediate. Without their command vessel directing the fight, the remaining Vaskar ships fell into confusion, their coordinated formation breaking apart into scattered, uncertain groups. Some tried to regroup. Others began to withdraw entirely, retreating from the debris field as though only now recognizing the trap they had flown into. "Captain!" Amara Singh reported, her voice filled with disbelief. "Vaskar forces are retreating. All remaining ships are breaking off and withdrawing from the system." Maria allowed herself a long, slow breath, the tension of the battle slowly draining from her shoulders as she watched the black spearhead shapes of the enemy fleet scatter and flee into the darkness beyond the debris field. She had not truly believed, not fully, that they would survive this day. And yet here she was, standing on the bridge of the Hyperion, watching Earth's oldest enemy retreat from a graveyard that had once marked humanity's greatest defeat. "Status of our ships?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Andor reports hull integrity at 55%. Shields offline. But she's stable," Okoro said. "Andromeda is at 70% hull integrity, minor damage. Meridian and Valkyrie are both holding steady. Endeavor reports moderate damage but fully operational." "And the Coldstream," Maria said quietly. The bridge fell silent for a moment. "We lost her, Captain, but her sacrifice bought the opening we needed." Maria nodded slowly, feeling the weight of that loss settle over her again, mixed now with something she had not expected to feel after 11 years of war, a fragile, cautious sense of hope. They had won. Not the war, not yet, but a single battle that should have been impossible to survive. "Open a channel to all surviving ships," she said. "Squadron-wide. Channel open, Captain." Maria stood at the center of the bridge, looking out at the drifting wreckage of the battle, at the 6 damaged but living ships that had once been nothing more than a graveyard, and found her voice steady despite everything her heart was carrying. "This is Captain Maria Reyes of the Hyperion, to every ship in this squadron," she said. 2 years ago, the Sol Defense Fleet made its last stand in this system, and paid the highest price a fleet can pay. Today, you all fought again, wounded and outnumbered, and you turned back an enemy fleet that outnumbered us 6-1. I don't have the words to properly thank each of you, or to properly honor what the Coldstream gave today so the rest of us could survive. But I promise you this, Earth will know what happened here. Every name, every ship, every sacrifice, from Kepler Ridge 2 years ago to this very day, will be remembered." A chorus of quiet acknowledgments answered her, 6 ships, and their crews of 1, holding position in the wreckage of a battlefield that had finally, after 2 long years, tipped in humanity's favor. In the days that followed, the story of Kepler Ridge spread through what remained of Earth's shattered communication network, carried from outpost to outpost, from shelter to shelter, until it reached the last cities, still standing on Earth itself. The Hyperion and her small squadron of reawakened ships returned to friendly space slowly, repairing what damage they could along the way, escorting vital supply convoys, and relaying critical intelligence about Vaskar fleet movements gathered during their long journey home. Maria finally managed to reach Earth's communication network 3 days after the battle, and for the first time in 4 months, she heard her daughter's voice. Sophia was alive, safe in one of the last shelters beneath the ruins of what had once been a great city. And though the conversation was brief, interrupted twice by the unreliable signal, it was enough. It was more than enough. Command, when they finally reviewed the full report of the battle, was stunned by what Project Lazarus had proven capable of, even in its limited, experimental form. New orders came quickly, authorizing a full search of every major battlefield graveyard scattered across the solar system, in the hope that more dormant ships, retrofitted under the old program or repaired by chance, might still be waiting to be found. It was not a guarantee of victory. The Vaskar Dominion remained a vast and powerful enemy, and Earth's remaining forces were still small compared to what they had once commanded. But for the first time in years, there was a plan, a direction, a reason to believe the war might yet be winnable. Maria stood once more on the bridge of the Hyperion 3 weeks later, watching a small formation of ships gather in the space above what remained of humanity's last shipyard, a formation that now included not just her own battered vessel, but the Meridian, the Andromeda, the Valkyrie, the Andor, and the Endeavor, each one slowly being repaired and reinforced by engineering teams working around the clock. She thought often of the Coldstream, of the ship, and the AI that had chosen to give everything it had in its first moments of renewed life, so that the others might survive. A memorial had already been planned, a small monument to be built near the shipyard, bearing the names of every ship and every crew lost at Kepler Ridge, alongside the ships that had, against every reasonable expectation, found their way back. "Captain," Okoro said, stepping up beside her on the bridge, "Command wants to know what we should call this squadron, now that it's official." "They're asking for a name." Maria considered the question for a long moment, looking out at the small, scarred fleet gathered before her, ships that had once been the wreckage of humanity's worst defeat, and were now, somehow, the first real hope Earth had felt in years. "Tell them we're calling it the Kepler Squadron," she said finally, "so that no one ever forgets where we came from, and no one ever forgets what it means to come back." Far beyond the edge of the solar system, the Vaskar Dominion began preparing its response, gathering new fleets, planning new offensives against the small, stubborn species that refused to accept defeat, even after 11 years of relentless war. But for now, in the space above Earth's last shipyard, humanity's fleet was growing again, one repaired hull at a time, carrying forward the memory of everyone who had fallen, and the quiet, unbreakable determination of everyone who still remained. The war was far from over, but for the first time in a very long while, Earth was no longer standing alone in the dark.